we have been employing a program of this nature at Cressy Sports Performance since, I believe, early 2008. And at this point, between our two facilities, we've got somewhere in the vicinity of 500 plus intern alums out in the wild functioning within the fitness industry. So we have had tons of opportunity to do this right, do it wrong, learn from our mistakes, pour fuel on the fire with the things that went well. And I now have the benefit of hindsight, and I'm able to identify the things that work particularly well and what you want to avoid. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Business for Unicorns podcast. Again, I'm Pete Dupuy, returning with another solo episode. This week, I'm going to be talking about internships, designing them specifically going from 0 to 1. Before I do, I want to mention a free brainstorm session we do here at Business for Unicorns. If you are a gym owner with 30 or more clients, we do these free calls where we help you get clear on where you want your gym to go, what's currently working, what isn't working, and what the plan needs to look like to get you there. And we do this because we know some of you are going to look for our help to implement the strategies we outline. But otherwise, regardless, you're going to get a lot of value. You're going to enjoy the call. We're going to add some new people to our network. And if this is something that interests you, click on the link in the show notes and we can get you booked. So let's get talking about internships. I have internships on the brain because we are going to be doing our annual, or I should say our fall retreat out in Denver in late September. There are seats available, and I am specifically going to be talking about internships. I'm going to be doing a workshop on it on day 2 of this event, and I'm going to go down this deep rabbit hole of talking about exactly how I would design an internship from start to finish. We have been employing a program of this nature at Cressy Sports Performance since, I believe, early 2008. And at this point, between our two facilities, we've got somewhere in the vicinity of 500 plus intern alums out in the wild functioning within the fitness industry. So we have had tons of opportunity to do this right, do it wrong, learn from our mistakes, pour fuel on the fire with the things that went well. And I now have the benefit of hindsight, and I'm able to identify the things that work particularly well and what you want to avoid. Michael Keeler actually asked that I put together a playbook of sorts for our internal documentation at Unicorn Society. And what I thought was going to be a quick and fairly simple and actionable little document ended up being a 2,300 word manifesto that I sent his way. And that's honestly going to end up being kind of the framework for this presentation that I'll be giving. But I'm going to cover it all, from program, conception of the idea, all the way on to execution and what that might look like 500 plus interns later. Today, I want to talk to you about the framework, just the 7 steps I would suggest you think about taking if you want to go from, I have this idea of an internship, to executing with your first intern. And none of them are particularly overwhelming, but it's important that they all happen in a fairly predictable order. The first of those steps is I want you to brain dump. I want you to basically put on paper, maybe it's on a marker board, maybe it's on a digital file, I don't care how you do it. I want you to outline what the perfect coach, quote unquote, looks like on paper. So what are their skills? What does their experience look like? What kind of personality do they have? What information will they have consumed? What seminars will they have attended? Or books have they read? Or articles have they consumed? Or in-services from your own facility that you recorded they will have watched? What are all the things that need to be communicated to these candidates to make them a passable coach later on down the road? Once you've done that brain dump, you've basically got a pile of information that you can start working off of, and you're going to need to start building around that. Second step you're going to do, once you have this brain dump, this massive mess of information you want this theoretical coach to consume, I want you to prioritize it. So you need to identify basically your must-haves and your nice-to-haves. And a must-have would be something in your programming philosophy that has not changed since you started. Okay, so I don't believe I've ever seen a client come through our gym, or I should say 99+% of the clients who come through our gym get to trap bar deadlift at some point in our facility. And so that would qualify as a must-have. Understanding why we do that, how we coach it, how we execute it with athletes, maybe what the best cues are that we use to do so. But basically understanding that that is a foundational principle in our programming. It is absolutely a must-have. Now, the nice-to-haves, I typically would categorize these as the acronym methodologies that come and go in our world. Those 3-letter acronyms, the new training hyped up concept that some people go way too far with and they make it the entirety of their training model and they ultimately fail. And then some people understand that they're just tools in the toolkit and they complement their programming strategy. They don't become their programming strategy. Those nice to have pieces are important to identify because you are going to have a certain amount of time to educate an intern and make them into a viable either potential member of your team or a coach who's going to enter the workforce and basically reflect your business and your brand for an extended period once they leave. And you got to figure out how those two categories are structured and how are you going to make sure that all of the must-haves are touched within the window of time you have. So the third step in the process, establish the duration of your program. And that has a lot to do with that must-have and nice-to-have list. Because at CSP, we have 3 primary internship windows. We've got something that basically follows an academic calendar. So you might say we have a summer internship, we have a semester 1 internship, and we have a semester 2 internship. And those are 3 very different learning experiences because of their varied duration. So a summer internship would be the shortest of the bunch. That might be from the first Monday in June until mid to late August. So maybe a 12-ish week internship. Then our fall internship or semester 1 internship might run from the first Monday in September until just before Christmas. And then the semester 2 internship would be the longest of the 3. And that would run from typically January 2nd until mid-ish May. And those are pretty different internship durations. That might be a 12-week internship, a 16, and an upwards of 20. And those are very different as far as what can be covered. And the must-haves list mentioned as step number 2 absolutely has to fit within the confines of a 12-week internship. And so your must-haves are basically what's the bare minimum as far as education and onboarding goes that a full-time employee would have to have at the conclusion of an internship to be employable. And then from there, the nice-to-have stuff, these bonus concepts, lessons, programming, educational sequences that we do, those fall into weeks 13, 14, 15, 16, or even beyond that. But I need to know that any intern who comes through our doors crushed the must-haves. Okay? The 4th step, so first 3 steps thus far, brain dump, prioritize into 2 categories, must-have and nice-to-have, and then establish your duration. Figure out what the bare minimum amount of time is that you're going to have to do this to make an intern go from 0 to 1, with 1 being employable. Now, the 4th step is reverse engineer. So I want you to take all this information that you've put together, and I want you to ask yourself, what's the logical cadence that this be delivered? Because we need to build a curriculum around those must-haves, and we need to stick to the fundamentals. So we're not going to teach somebody extensive programming strategy during the first week and then wait until week 10 to teach them how to build a decent warm-up. Obviously, we want to think logically, what is the order of events here, and how do we build in week 1, in week 2, in week 3, and so on. And the logic of the program says that even if someone leaves early, we know that they are logically well on their way to being ready to coach, but we can finish up maybe in a remote format if we have to. But we got to make sure that the most important meat and potatoes happen early in this reverse engineering process. Next thing you want to do, once you've outlined your hypothetical curriculum that fits the confines of the potentially shortest internship period you're going to offer, you need to make it marketable. So you're basically taking this curriculum and you're turning it into very clearly bulleted points that can fit onto a flyer or a social media post. And what you want to prioritize is simplicity in both your copy, in your visuals, and how you present it. And you want to make sure that this is something that you can, for lack of a better term, sell. So You might be selling it to candidates. You might be selling it to colleges and universities or the faculty there who are advising that their students pursue opportunities like this. But you need to remember that the program in and of itself is something to be marketed, and making it marketable means make it easy to consume visually, make it quick to explain if you find yourself with a 90-second elevator pitch to explain your internship program. That's all part of making it marketable, but you need to package it as something that you can pitch, because you really are going to have to sell your operation to get those leads. Next step, I want you to map the academic landscape. Okay, so that is your 6th of 7 steps. I want you to sit down and look at your region, preferably inside of 90 minutes from your facility, and honestly, sub 60 minutes would be best. What is every college and university in your market that offers an exercise science or a kinesiology or physiology type degree? Where are they? What is the academic requirements associated with that program? Maybe they have a field-based learning experience mandate. Maybe they have specific exposures to settings like yours where they need to get out into the field and experience seeing these operations in person. Maybe they need to do a brief work study. Maybe they have a certain minimum threshold of hours they need. Maybe they just do research projects on programs like yours or businesses that operate within the space. But you want to know what they ask of their students and start asking yourself, how can I be their first option when it comes time to recommend programs that are taken into consideration? Once that landscape's mapped, you got to start diving into the process of building out a network with each. There are academic advisors or faculty members at every single one of these programs who are probably assigned the responsibility of working with students to identify field-based internship requirements. And if you aren't out there making sure that these schools know you exist and talking about your program and delivering those marketable materials I mentioned, they're not going to go looking for you. They want the path of least resistance. So if they have one internship program that's been very helpful in the past, they're just going to keep funneling leads to those ones. If you exist, you need to make sure they know you exist. And as they often say, closed mouths don't get fed. So get out there and start talking about what you do with these colleges and universities. Now, if you've had one employee, one intern who has had a college experience of this nature, you've already got the first person you need to talk to about this type of networking. So maybe you had a part-time coach who is pursuing an exercise science degree, and you went to them and you said, hey, who's your favorite professor while you were at school? I'd love to connect with them just to talk shop on what we're doing. Who was the academic advisor that was tasked with helping you secure an internship that the school would sign off on? I would love to connect with that person. All you're doing is asking for the opportunity to interact with people in their academic community, and those people aren't usually disappointed to be introduced to gym owners who have viable programs. Once the landscape has been mapped, you understand the academic dynamics, the last 7th step here in this process is you need to talk about it everywhere, not just emailing academic people. You need to be talking to your athletes about your internships. You need to be putting this stuff on social media consistently. It needs to have its own page on your website. You need to send off emails to your community, even if they aren't necessarily potential candidates, because you never know who knows somebody who is looking. And the law of repeated exposure says that you might need to do this in a way that hits people's radars 6, 7, 8, 9 times before they take any sort of action. And surprisingly, what we've found as we get deeper and deeper into this with hundreds of interns and literally thousands of candidates that we've considered over the years, one of the fastest growing intern candidate demos we have, and it does not appear to be slowing down, is former clients. It's athletes who worked with us as they were middle schoolers or high schoolers, and they had touch points with our staff and with our interns, and they admired what they saw, and they were excited about the environment, and they said to themselves, someday I'd like to work in an environment like this. Those people tend to come back. They come full circle. So when we announce to people that we're looking for intern candidates and we love to prioritize recent clients, we do tend to get leads out of that, and those people exist on your client roster. So that's going to be it for today. Again, if you want to go deeper into this, join us during the last weekend in September out in Denver, where I'm going to do a full hour, maybe an hour and 10 minutes on this material and talk shop on it all weekend with anyone who's interested. But to revisit the 7 on the list here, first you're going to brain dump what a perfect intern looks like at the conclusion of their internship. What did they learn? Next, you're going to prioritize the list of all of those things into must-haves and nice-to-haves. Third, you're going to build out a duration that shows you how do I get the must-haves built into a defined window of time, whatever your most abbreviated internship period is going to be. Next, you're going to reverse engineer the program based on that list, and you're going to design a logical curriculum that's going to go from week 1 to week whatever that may be. I'd suggest you probably need a minimum of 8 weeks to run a good internship program and feel good about what you're putting out into the industry, but some people might have a different experience. The fifth step, you're going to make it marketable. So get into Canva or whatever AI system you are using and design some flyers that make your program look great on paper. And then next, you're going to map the academic landscape. Step 6, you're going to get in touch with as many people as you can at as many colleges and universities that deliver information on our industry, and make sure that you're on all their radars so that their students are directed your way when it comes time for them to get some field-based experience. And the last thing you're going to do is talk about it. Never stop talking about it. Discuss your business, discuss your internship. Just be an advocate for your brand and this program in particular as often as possible. That'll do it for now. If you have any questions you want to follow up or discuss further, my email is pete@businessforunicorns.com, and I look forward to connecting. Thanks.